Hello and welcome to the latest edition on the ARC podcast on business disruption, mobility, and all things EAM. With us are two experts from Infor. We've got Kevin Price and Navin Kulkarni, and I'm looking forward to speaking with them. In fact, why don't we find out who they are right now? Kevin, want to give a background on your role?
My pleasure, Ed. Thank you. My name is Kevin Price. I am an Infor EAM technical product evangelist. I'm responsible for the industry and solution strategy for the Infor EAM portfolio. I've been doing nothing but EAM for about 23 years. So my professional life has been spent in, around, and all about EAM. I'm out of Greenville, South Carolina, which is where the acquisition of the technology was done by a company of the name of DataStream back in 2006. And throughout that capacity, I've been in sales, service, development, just about everything that you can think of. So excited to be here today to be able to chat with you.
Great, Kevin. We're excited to have you here as well. Navin, how about you?
Hey, Ed. Thank you for having me on. My name is Navin. I am a senior product director at Infor. I'm responsible for product management functions for our operational product lines, and the flagship of which is Enterprise Asset Management, and the other one is Infor Factory Track. I've been with Infor for just about a decade now, and exclusively dedicated to manufacturing and EAM and manufacturing, as well as maintenance-related practices. My background, my undergrad is in computer science, but after my grad school, I've worked mainly on the operational side of activities. So I like the combination of technology and operational business challenges.
Great, and we've met, and you must have started with Infor when you were 10, because 10 years I don't think so from that perspective. So let's go back. So Kevin, you very well seasoned, and about the idea of mobility. One of the things we've done a lot of research on, and you do a lot, is not only mobility as an app, which we've talked about, people in the industry has talked about for the last probably at least 15, 20 years, and maybe even longer, but it's become integral part of an EAM solution. I'd love to get your thoughts on kind of this, what you've seen in the journey, and particularly over the last 2 or 3 years, and what's going on within the EAM market as far as expectations for mobility products.
Sure. So let me take you a little bit further back to 2 to 3 years, because I think it's important to understand as we start to look at where we're going in the future, which Navin will be able to talk to very eloquently. So way back when, we used to have these devices that we would affectionately call bricks. And you laugh because remember them, and some other people on the phone remember them too, and people listening to the podcast I'm sure would too. But these were things that ran with something called hex files and DOS screens and things like that. And mainly were solutions that were designed in the storeroom. And we had systems like that way back when, and then they evolved. We got the opportunity to work with Microsoft in a co-development effort and launched a Windows-based application way back then on an operating system at the time they called Pegasus, and then evolved into what is now, of course, Windows Mobile and beyond. But we did a mobile application back then, and we really targeted storeroom transactions and mobility for work management. And it was done as a separate application because that's how the world worked. Well, the web came along and everything was looking to be in little Java components on phones and different types of things. So we did that. And then things went back to looking at being on the web again and making them what's called responsively designed to work on a phone. And you have a mobile site and a full site and all this different type of stuff. And our user base and our user communities and the tools we saw out there really pushed us to looking at it in more of an app. So going to the App Store or going to the Google Play Store or going to the Windows Store and downloading these things, and they become resident and local, which means you have synchronization. When connected, you have connectivity. When disconnected, you're disconnected and sync it through. And really started enjoying that quite a bit. So what we began off with is really our third or fourth generation of mobility at that point in 2012. And it really looked at these apps as their roles. So for us in mobility, we've been doing it for so long, it needs to be a natural expression and a natural extension to who we are in EAM. So if you're out in the field doing work management functions, you should probably have a device that supports a work management function, inspection function, being able to do checklists in the field. And we have lots of use cases and examples and scenarios for this. We also have scenarios now where we can put the application onto a kiosk, whether that's something really 6-7 feet tall kind of thing, or whether it's something that's installed to articulated arms that can be moved around like in a vehicle maintenance facility. Some people use devices that are tablets. Some people use phones. There's really a wide variety of stuff. Over time, we found some opportunity and some challenges with the native approach. The native approach meant that we had to write it in the native language. So we had to do some Objective-C. We had to do different types of Java applications that were local. We had to work on synchronization. Good for us because it's our application. We know our architecture and our database, so we know how to synchronize well and how to get the right information to the right person at the right time kind of thing. But applications like EAM, which first line of code has been out since 1986, so it does quite a bit. And as we start to look at, the challenges people have in the modern day today, it's not just work management function, it's every function. Public sector, as an example, they just want to have a basic application where I can go report where there's graffiti or there's water collecting or there's other types of problems that are out there for easy casual use. So we started looking at all these different apps that are going through, and then Navin and his team in research and development started taking a look at it a couple of years ago through a different lens and looking at it at a lens where what can I do now? Are the tools better? Are they more mature to where I don't have to do an app anymore? Maybe it's an opportunity now to take a look at what I can do in the application itself to make it at my own demand. So as I start to look at maybe doing calibration, because I'm in pharmaceutical or chemical, then I can unleash the calibration module onto a mobile device with ease and not have to go through the release process into the cloud, into the app store, until all these other types of things. So I'd like to have Navin talk to that a little bit, if you don't mind, Ed, because
absolutely.
I think the more recent contemporary works that we're doing now along that front and moving really away from the native application development, but not leaving it alone. We still support the native application development environments and those apps, and we will. But the opportunities we have now with the new tool sets to be able to naturally extend anything in the application to a mobile device is really pretty exciting. Navin?
Kevin, I couldn't agree more, and I'm going to slightly use your points that you just talked about and extrapolate them a little bit from my perspective. One of them was technology is ever changing, and the other point is that customers want a configurable solution that can either work on a desktop or go along with them when they are out in the field performing maintenance activities. When we first started this project, a couple of years ago, we did a lot of research as to where trends in mobility are heading. Where's our customer base, how they utilize our solution, et cetera. And Honeywell published I believe it was a survey that talked about the fact around deskless workforce, and they said that 80% of workforce in the world is deskless. They don't have a computer or a desktop that they sit in front of. And when it couldn't be truer when it comes to the users of EAM, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody on this call once said that it is very unnatural to see a maintenance worker sit behind a computer, a desktop, or a laptop and be performing his job. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't agree more.
And it's only because it's true.
And mobility is really if a tool, if utilized correctly, can bridge the gap between proper asset data collection in more effective way and also enforcing the rules that you have set in your EAM system more effectively. A lot of customers in the past have done this with point native solutions, like Kevin mentioned, which have achieved the results in some way, shape, or form. You can obviously get technology to achieve the results you want by in some manner. It may not be the most efficient, but what we're seeing is customers are demanding a seamless experience between their desktop application and their mobile application, and the bridge or the lines between these two applications are really blurring. So I couldn't agree with Kevin more. So.
And articulating that a little bit, people are demanding, people are expecting. I mean, especially with new hires coming out of STEM majors, they're already expecting to have applications like EAM and others already available on mobile devices. Mm-hmm. I shouldn't have to go out in the field, write down an inspection or calibration elements or details from a work event that I went through, or findings that may create subsequent work action from a preventive maintenance routine, and on a sheet of paper, and try to get that all put back into the system by some clerk who wasn't there and didn't see or know, regardless of the fact that I cannot capture video and multimedia types of things while I'm on the field. So these types of expectations, are commonplace everywhere we go. They always have been, but I'm really excited to see all the work Navin and his team are doing in releasing out the capabilities to unleash the entire application, as opposed to just components of it. And for us, it's been something as an ongoing challenge to, which areas of the application to add, how synchronization works, how it comes in. And while we still maintain those native applications, moving back into this environment to be able to put the entire application into the hands of the technician, the storeroom, anyone, is just an exciting time.
Good point. And it's always important in EAM and work and asset management, but it almost seems we're at a different level now, a higher level, where not only mobility, but remote access and business continuity management is front and center, and not just for COVID-19, but also natural disasters over the years. Can we discuss this as to what you've seen, what you're recommending to clients who really now have, have really been shaken? How do you manage an operation when you have business disruption? Kevin, any thoughts on that?
Well, first off and foremost, calling it business continuity and business disruption really is what it is, because this pandemic we're facing now is horrific, and the impact that it's making to customers and suppliers to those customers, and really the entire environment is astounding. But it is a business disruption and business continuity challenge, just as one would be in the form of a hurricane, in the form of a tornado, in the form of a flooding event, in the form of a catastrophic explosion or a catastrophic event that happened. This is something that you unfortunately need to prepare for. This is something that you need to be able to support before, during, and after. So when you think about business continuity disruption, there are thankfully some events that you can prepare for, such as some of our customers, they operate in areas of the world that the 500-year flood happens every 2 years. Or if you think about the hurricanes that happen in the southeast, there's events and actions you can do. So as the hurricane gets announced, not really yet, but as a tropical depression, then there's certain preventive maintenance activities you can do to get prepared. As it gets identified as a category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's different actions you can do to get prepared and prepare to protect your facility. If it's a public sector event, protect the public infrastructure and the people that are around it. And when you do that, it makes the recovery and the recuperation of the expense of doing those activities a lot easier, because you have it documented, and it helps you from that disruption. Looking at mobility in terms of how that also affects with disruption, especially when we're going out to situations where we have to do condition assessments, where we have to do different work events that are out there. You may be in an environment where you need to continue work and continue doing work, but you may not have access to the server at that time. Having solutions that work in the field as a disconnected option is a wonderful thing. to protect you from that potential disruption that goes on. Now, that may be a short period of time. It may just be because you don't have a wide area wireless connection, but it's definitely something to take in consideration. There are some places where mobile can support business continuity, but if you look at it at a broader sense, challenges to business continuity requires really a more modern architecture standard. This is one of the reasons why we push a lot of our applications into the cloud as a cloud-first release strategy. We want to make sure that our customers, especially in areas that are prone to disaster, don't have to worry about disaster impacts to their business from an IT perspective especially. They can be able to look at having the application into the cloud. When they get an opportunity to be brought back into business and start going back into the business, all their data is not lost, their systems are not lost. It's just a natural element of having a SaaS solution. Mm-hmm. From a business continuity perspective, there's a lot of different lenses to look at, whether from mobility, having the sustainability of the application throughout. I think what we're seeing now, however, is the impacts post the disruption. So if we think about what happens after this particular pandemic, for example, we're seeing customers that have to rethink their procedures and their protocols that they had in place. Were they ready? Did they get prepared? Do they have people and the right protocols and qualifications built in to handle this particular type of disaster? And some of them don't. Some of them do. They're going back to it again. Materials, making sure you have the right materials on hand when equipment is not able to run, or worse yet, when equipment shuts down, sometimes you have to go refurbish it again because it's not meant to be shut down. There's a lot of different ways to look at business continuity challenges, and it's really a vertical specific thing for the most part. You're going to have different challenges. Like just today, New York City MTA posted out where all the subway systems were being shut down.
Yes.
The first time in 115 years, 116 years, something like that. And what does that mean for those particular pieces of equipment? It's a tremendous opportunity to go in and disinfect and clean and do a lot of other things, but there could be potential damages to equipment that is used to running 24/7. So really rethinking about what business continuity means and how to handle it as it occurs, how to prepare for it, and then of course really looking at the impact of the equipment after that impacted or disruption is gone. Navin?
I think, Kevin, you covered a lot of different important topics. I think I'd like to summarize this from my perspective to say the way and our solution consulting team recently also did a great case study and demo on how you can use EAM for COVID-19 specific scenarios, including what Kevin was just mentioning as well. But I want to look at three different things, right? Number one is, if you're a business who's still open and operational, how are you taking care of your employees, the safety of your employees? So safety is obviously a key area of EAM, and how are you able to enforce safety measures and keep your employees' health and safety in mind while all of this is going on and beyond this, of course. How do you keep your assets performing to the required capacity and location? And also understanding, certain things like black swan events. That's something that we have recently introduced into our product. In fact, in February, I was discussing with one of our business analysts where we were talking about black swan events, and something he talked about. This is something that somebody may never use in EAM, but we're introducing as catastrophic events that nobody has ever thought of. And lo and behold, in March now we have a catastrophic event that we are all faced with. And how do you transition and pivot your asset management strategy in case of black swan events is something that we have now available within EAM. And finally, understanding how do we learn from all of these things and impact our future strategy of managing our assets from a perspective of risk or criticality or the service level that you want to deliver, and how will all of your EAM related processes impact all of that. So I think those are some of the areas that we are working with our customers on and would continue to address as well.
So Navin, so not only in the mobility side, but also control systems and integration to IoT sensors and edge devices. Has your have you accelerated development on some of these areas? Have you thought about or how to open up integration or interoperability that's already there? What might you suggest to either existing EAM customers or prospects who might want to start adopting a more proactive strategy to overcome business disruption?
I think this was, for me, a learning experience at the ARC conference over the past few years, and understanding really practical benefits of industrial IoT. There's always a lot of buzzwords that are thrown around in terms of AI, ML, big data, but really seeing what has worked for other industry and what has worked well has helped me formulate my decisions, right? Mm-hmm. So not that these are be all end all, but first of all, everything has to start with a business value in mind. It doesn't matter if it's an IoT project or a mobility project or an APM project. We want to start with what is really the business driver that's driving this particular technology initiative. When it comes to IoT in particular, EAM has been very fortunate to have an architecture that has been always very open. Infor EAM has an internet-based architecture that has several web services, thousands of web services that our customers can integrate our solutions into, either third-party applications, Infor applications, or other devices. Mm-hmm. But with the evolution of technology and cloud-based applications, cloud-based platforms, this has become easier. We have open source platforms, we have REST-based platforms that are making it easier for consumers to interface newer technology, and also provide context to the data that you capture. So it's not only there was a failure of equipment, but there was a failure of equipment because of X, Y, and Z conditions. And that becomes really critical to understand. So merging together of that operational information, which could be, temperature, vibration, and also EAM information to understand what happened to the performance of the asset is really the holy grail. And I think that's where we're seeing most of our customers drive their strategy towards, to provide more context to their maintenance and operational information.
Interesting.
We have a use case that was done at our last forum in New Orleans last year, back when, remember when we used to be able to travel way back when?
Yes.
So at that event, this was a presentation done by a customer of ours in Puerto Rico. And to Navin's point, they were mashing together data elements that were structured, coming from EAM, historical reference points, measuring points, climatic conditions, because they were dealing with weather condition problems and humidity problems and different types of things, because they firmly believed that the OEM specifications on the operational behavior for their really expensive assets were wrong. And they needed to have earlier warning so they can get into predictive maintenance models. They needed to readjust how the application of that particular asset was as it was installed and used. And without bringing in multiple asset data sets and third-party data sets and data that didn't have, you would think, anything to do with it because it's coming from climatic conditions when it does, it really, took a turn for them to understand the asset better than they thought they did, and help serve as a point to the original equipment manufacturer new data points to consider when it gets installed. So these types of opportunities exist to be able to keep track of, are you getting the true efficiency as designed by the original equipment manufacturer when you bought this? And that's really where you want to be, right? Is you want to keep that equipment running just like brand new for its entire life. And we all know that that's not possible. That's why we have enterprise asset management systems. But when you start to measure that, when you start to put those elements in and understand them, you most likely are going to have to incorporate elements that you didn't think you were going to. So you need to have the structure to be able to support that.
Interesting. Good point. So discussion on comment about predictive maintenance, but also thinking about reliability-centered maintenance and other condition monitoring, many of which have been around for many, many years and oftentimes are with partners. But it almost seems like, and I'd love to get both of your thoughts, that as we look toward the next gen EAM systems over the last couple of years, maybe the last 5 years, perhaps even longer, but it almost seems like there's a convergence of EAM and APM a bit overall. I'd love to get your thoughts on whether that's, if you're seeing that as well, or if you're seeing something different. Kevin?
Absolutely. So I could not tell you the last time that, well, again, when I was back in February when we traveled, but I would have been in a physical meeting or just now virtually on the meeting, where you have 10, 12 people in a discussion about a particular operation and maintenance approach, where you do not have anybody from reliability in there, where you do not have anybody from sustainability in there. And they're looking at what they can use in terms of the data that's captured in enterprise asset management to support their needs. And what they've done is they're using a lot of times applications that are third party specific to their industry. They're using applications that are specific to asset performance management capability. They're looking at spreadsheets to be able to understand the root cause failure analysis trends, looking at statistical analysis trends, looking at different methods to be able to do prediction better. So it was a natural progression for us to rejuvenate the ideas that we had around reliability-centered maintenance, reliability planning and analysis, and criticality and risk structures and everything that you find around asset performance management, because it's really also driving a lot of the discussions around our asset management circles, at least that we're involved with, especially in some of the more asset intensive and asset specific ones. These are things that you should expect to have in an EAM now. These are not things that you definitely want to integrate. At the same time, you want to have the opportunity to integrate a third-party asset performance management solution if you want to. So for us, what this means is it means the development and creation and continuance of what we started many years ago around reliability-centered maintenance, around criticality definition, providing formulas for this kind of thing, capturing failure codes, solution codes, reason for capture codes. There's a lot of different types of codes that are out there that we capture when we do a work analysis. There's also lots of data points we've already mentioned around meters that we capture as we start to bring in, but we start to understand where those ceiling limits and their floor limits and the alerts that they come through. These all bring in a lot of the asset performance management needs into EAM. So we start to develop out even more of the asset management lens than we had before, because we're incorporating a lot of these standards now in RCM, whereas third parties were required to be used. At the same time, however, we retain the integration layer for our application and architectural approach, at least, which is a web services tier to allow third parties to integrate and to pull in third parties that have libraries and histories of certain types of equipment in their operation in the particular environment and how they're used and all that kind of stuff. So what we're seeing is a demand to pull a lot of that asset performance management capability and reliability centered maintenance capability into EAM, which of course broadens the scope and makes that view of asset and work management bigger, but at the same time making sure that plumbing is there if you wanted to do a third party integration. But I definitely think, at least within the past 5 years, for a lot of our customers, user advisory board members, group members, boards and committees that we serve on, that the ideas and concepts of reliability centered maintenance, thankfully, is having a much stronger resurgence than it had probably 7-10 years ago. Navin?
I mean, Kevin, you've been in the space much longer than I am, so listening to you talk about this, I always learn something. I'm looking at this, as Ed talked about a resurgence of EAM solutions and evolving into APM solutions as sort of a grassroots movement, if you will. But that's because we're taking really the fundamental asset-related, equipment-related information and providing that context to that, and then layering additional algorithms on top of that to normalize that information to form models. So what does that all mean? What I'm trying to say is that condition assessment or condition monitoring is not a one-size-fits-all solution, right? You can't have a template to do condition assessment for, let's say, a fleet-intensive industry and then use the same template for a manufacturing industry. It probably won't work. But what we can always rely on, as Kevin mentioned, is the principles or fundamentals of things like ISO 55000 and reliability-centered maintenance. ISO 55000 talks about the principles of plan, do, check, act. Right. And reliability-centered maintenance talks about the concept of risk and criticality, right? So that's exactly what we're doing with Infor EAM, where we're building on these concepts of ISO 55000 and reliability-centered maintenance, formalizing concepts that we already provided a while ago. I mean, they used to be configurations, but now they're formal concepts within our solution that allow you to do things like consequences of failure, probability of failure, or performance calculations to understand what is the performance of an asset, or normalize the performance of multiple different assets across a class. Apply things like Markov chain analysis to understand stochastic models of if the state of a particular asset is X, what is the probability that the state of the same asset will be Y? And these really give you tools to build on a practice that allow, if you can use EAM tools like surveys and checklists to build a framework to collect the right data, over time you can gather such rich information to provide you context to do equipment ranking, condition assessment, and asset performance management. So we're really excited about what the future holds with, as you mentioned, merging together of EAM and APM, and we're certainly heading that way.
Great. This is all extremely valuable information and great insight. I have one last question that may or may not have a full answer, but I'll give it a try here for both of you. For those EAM customers who have on-prem solutions, haven't yet looked for other solutions, and trying to have a strategy for being able to manage remotely, is there anything they can do? Any suggestions to be able to allow them to have a little more flexibility and as far as their business continuity plans over the next year or two? I realize many will go to upgraded systems at some point, but is there anything they can do in the meantime? Navin, any
shot at that first, Navin?
Sure. Well, the good thing is when it comes to EAM, we don't really differentiate between our code base between on-premise and multi-tenant cloud. So it's the same EAM application, whether you're running on-premise or in multi-tenant cloud. Mm-hmm. The only difference is the cadence of releases, so you will probably get certain features ahead of time on-premise versus, I apologize, in multi-tenant cloud as opposed to on-premise. Mm-hmm. And we constantly work with our platform technology team like InforOS, where we qualify things like hybrid deployments. So let's say a customer who has EAM on-premise today, but would like to leverage our technology platform on-premise or in multi-tenant cloud, they are able to perform a hybrid integration and leverage some of those components today. I mean, they might not be able to leverage everything that's available in cloud, but at least they might be able to start somewhere. Mm-hmm. So over time, we also have additional programs, within our company like Lift and Shift or UpgradeX that allow them to move their EAM infrastructure to cloud. So it's not mandatory for them to move right away. They can start step by step and then move later as they please. So we support that.
To add on a little bit to that, we are a little bit unique, I guess, in that we have the exact same version on premise that we do in the cloud. So it makes the transition easy in moving folks that have local installations to the cloud. So getting them into an environment where they can have remote access where they can have more stability across business continuity disruption by putting them into the cloud. It's an easier thing. There is a transition from a culture that we're seeing, of course, have been seeing for a while. These are the guys that, are used to opening up Toad and just doing a query on the database and finding what they need. Or maybe they wrote a certain statement on the front end of the application, and instead of well-forming that better, they went in the back end and created an index for it to make it run better. There's things like that are a little bit of cultural transition for them. I want to talk a little bit about really quick the remote access and then the remote working that we find. When we push things into the cloud, into SaaS, there is a benefit in the remote worker because we do have a ton of investment on security access, making sure that when you are remote and you're going into the cloud, that you can work from home relatively easily. You may have your login password. You may have a multi-factor access protocol that you have to go through. There's other types of things to get into the system. But you can still function. You can do your job. You can get in and out of it. And that's really where mobility has come into play too, is as we start to use mobile applications and they're extensions of our core clients and web browsers. So because of that, they're behind a lot of security protocol. They're behind a lot of security. And that's one of the benefits that we get in working with companies like AWS, Amazon Web Services, and building out that structure in the cloud, because it takes a security step for us and puts it in a really positive way, allowing us to not have to worry about that as much as we would normally do. And that affords our customers to not have to worry about it almost at all. Mm-hmm. They just need to make sure that they have the right type of client, a mobile client, iPhone, an Android app, or whatever they're using to get it, or just a simple browser to get into it. They don't have to worry about the remote access challenge, as you would if you'd have to be behind a firewall, log in with VPN, do all these other things to be able to get to it. So as we start to build out our applications, we constantly think about the concepts we talked about today, is how we do mobility, what can we do to handle disruption, and what advanced techniques are out there in the market that we can incorporate.
Great. Well, this has been very interesting. And Kevin and Navin, I really appreciate your time. And if you have any other comments, now would be the time. But I think my questions have been answered. Any closing comments?
For me, I'm just excited to where we're going, because we typically, in the development process, in the strategy process, when we're thinking about where to take an application or solution set, we've got more ideas than we know what to do with. And we have more opinions that we know what to do with as well, because we have a lot of touch points. We get excited when those converge, because we develop applications that actually get used. We don't do one-off releases. We don't do one-off versioning. We put everything into the cloud and build upon that framework. We put everything into the product. We build upon that framework. We put everything into a release and build upon that framework. So as we start to roll out a product, we know it's built for a certain use case. It's built for a certain need. And literally within days, if not weeks, you can point to one of those customers, because of the speed at which it's deployed and the number of people that are on modern releases. You can actually see it being used, which is always the best thing. And it's the best feeling in the world when you spend all this time working on a use case to build out a specific capability, and then it actually gets used. Of course, on the other side of that coin, Ed, is when you spend a lot of time creating a use case and going through a development effort, it gets used, but in the wrong way. Oh, it just kills you, because they used it in a way that works for them. And you got to remember that in an application like ours, we build for all verticals at once, and we build flexible tools. So we are often surprised when we go out on site and say, wait a minute, what is this? Well, this is what I do. This, like, oh my God, it wasn't intended to do it, but that's cool. Look at that. I've taken pictures and videos because I wanted to come back and show my buddies. So it's exciting time to see that things that come to fruition like that. Navin, anything else for you?
Talking about pictures, I remember you told me, or maybe you sent me this picture of elevator maintenance in progress that said preventative maintenance, and you said that's not preventative maintenance. But no, I appreciate the time, Ed. I really do. I hope we get to see each other soon, maybe at Inforum.
Yes.
Or at the ARC conference. I hope we can travel. I hear Kevin's anxiety, and I say that as well, that I'm ready to get out of my house. So.
Well, gentlemen, thank you, Kevin and Navin. Thank you so much for your time and wonderful insight and wonderful conversation as always. And I look forward to seeing you soon as well.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate your time.